Here we go. Hey everyone, welcome to The Life of a Fruitcake, the LOAF podcast. Today I've got Jerry Alexander, who is a good friend of mine. He's a property guy. I'm going to be interviewing lots of property guys because that's the world that I live in, but this isn't necessarily a property podcast. Jerry Alexander is a fella that I've met who I admire massively as an entrepreneur. He's Scottish.
Don't hold that against me, mate.
Yeah, he does co-working environments. Commercial multi-occupancy is his thing. That's
my gig.
So Jerry, tell me a bit about yourself as an intro.
Okay, so you mentioned that I'm based up in Scotland. I have been in property industry for 24 years, which we just established. I couldn't remember that. And I've really niched into commercial property, but I have had do have other businesses. So I guess my public persona is around property, but I have done other things and have businesses that do or solve other problems. They're just not as prominent. I wouldn't count myself as an entrepreneur. I don't think I've been successful in multiple different businesses, but I would say I'm probably a business person. That's probably as far as I'd go.
The amount of people that do rock around calling themselves entrepreneurs with a few buy-to-lets and bits and bobs. My definition of an entrepreneur is someone who does business differently. And you have certainly dipped your toe in many different ventures and done things a bit differently or very, very vicariously and very, enthusiastically. I would definitely call you an entrepreneur.
Sure. Okay. So for me, an entrepreneur is someone that builds a successful business, whatever you want to call success, right? But success, I guess, is a business that can stand alone without them. Mm-hmm. And then, because that's sometimes the fluke, they go and do it again. That's someone who's an entrepreneur. They've managed to work out how to build businesses, not how to be lucky in a business.
Yes. Wow.
So for me, I don't feel I've quite achieved that yet, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm exactly the same. I haven't managed to get that where the business can stand alone without them bit. That systemized bit.
Yeah, I can go away for a few weeks, but I still, I mean, we've got fantastic people in our businesses, right?
Yeah,
but just, I don't feel that I've managed to systematize them enough to be able to do that yet. So I'm still tinkering.
Yeah. Now, I admire you massively for bringing me under your wing because you have a fantastic podcast, the Commercial Property Investor Podcast.
Well done.
And you've interviewed me twice on that and many other people as well. And yeah, I started following you on that. And a poddy is a great way of, expressing yourself and telling people what you do. You know, every event I run, everything I do, I'm telling people all the time, tell people what you do.
Yeah.
Because it creates pivot points.
Sure.
It brings people into sharp relief who actually could be of use to you, and you could be of use to them, and that's what it's all about.
One of your favourite phrases I've heard over the last few days is shy bairns.
Shy bairns getting out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's very good. One of my favourite phrases is in fact, it's on the wall up there. One of our guys has written up there from Wayne Gretzky, the hockey player, which is basically you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah.
It's absolutely. Like phone calls or not asking. Yeah, it's such a powerful thing because people sit there sometimes and think, oh, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to ask. I'm not going to put that offer in at that price. You just never know. You've got to do it.
One of my things is fruitcakes of a feather flock together. And when I first messaged you, it was actually through a mutual friend when I was like, hey, how come you've got this great method for running this, multi-occupancy commercial space? Our mutual friend Craig Lammy, and he was like, yeah, I've been getting mentored off this guy up north, Jerry Alexander. Check his podcast out, check his course out. And I was like, yeah, I definitely want to go on that guy's course. And actually, we've done a lot more, and you've given me so much information over the last, year that we've known each other. You came down to do a developers network for me, and you've come down and done a TPT, and you've got some great audiences. You've attracted some great audiences down south.
Down south, mate,
in sunny Darlow.
Yeah.
And such great feedbacks off your chat, so thanks for that. And thanks for bringing me under your wing when it's come to me saying, Jerry, I want to do a podcast. This is what it's called, and I'd like to interview you on it. Even though I don't see you as a complete fruitcake.
I appreciate you saying that. Thank you. I didn't have to ask the question. Good. I don't mind supporting you, but yeah.
As I've got to know you more, I found out that you are actually more of a fruitcake than I first thought. And I've just actually skinned you alive and got you to do understandmyself.com personal trait profiles by Jordan Peterson, which I think you loved and loathed in equal measure by the look at your face, screwing up on some of your...
I'm just skeptical of these things, right? Do you know so I've done loads of these personality test things over the years. And the best thing ever for me was I was on a course at Strathclyde Uni, and we did, I can't remember, it felt like we did a half a dozen in a day. It's like, this is just personality overload and confusion on who I'm supposed to be and what I'm supposed to be. And I spoke to the lady who was organised all of this stuff, and I said, look, I seem to come out kind of middle of the road in most of these things, and I find they're a bit difficult because I find that I'm questioning the questions, and it's maybe not quite drilling out of me what I think I am. Is it okay? And she says, it's okay to be in the middle. Mm-hmm. So she almost gave me permission to just be. It's like, it's okay. You're allowed to be in the middle of the road there, because some people come out and say, oh, I'm this. What are you? As though out of the 6 things you can only be one.
Now, when I first reached out to you, I've got a bit of a knack of reaching out to people and saying, hey, Jerry, I find your stuff so interesting, and I've been listening to your podcast, and I've got a group of people down in Darlington. You know, we're pretty much the most popular networking event outside of London in the world ever. And, and I think my crew, I think my crowd would really enjoy listening to what you have to say. And how do you say no to that, right? Even though
sure.
I'm, what 300?
That's the right way to ask.
Miles south, yeah. And I kind of, and I also drop in there, I do this stuff philanthropically, so which I do, and for you to come down, when you first came down, now that I know you, I do consider you a proper friend. I've got this thing, Jerry, right, where I gauge people on how much I like them by how far I would travel at what notice if they died and I had to come to the funeral.
Wow.
And I definitely, you're definitely one of those guys
just pause that. I don't want to hear anymore.
Jerry's keeled
over. Somebody's turning up. There's one person coming from Darlington. Thanks, Paul.
Well, this is the thing, you see. I gauge how much I like someone based on, would I cancel a motorbiking holiday I was in the middle of around the European mountains to come and go to Jerry's funeral?
Well, to be fair, I had an event on. You were going snowboarding like the next day or something, and you decided, I'll come to that. So that was good.
Yeah.
So there was a test.
I guess it's like, what would you drop?
Yeah. But I mean, if you've got some pistachio ice cream in, I'll be down in Darlington in a flash, right?
Oh, man, I tell you what you need. You need amaretto ice cream in a glass with hot espresso coffee. It's called what are those things called? An affogato.
Oh, yeah.
An affogato, the food of the gods. Anyway, we're going off track. The first time you came down, you came down with your son and you did a TDM. We walked around the building. That's the handy thing about hosting a networking event is, like, I've got this building. I really need an expert.
Have a look. Yeah,
I need an expert to come and have a look at it. I think I'll ask one to come down to my event and speak and get himself lots of extra followers, and he can come and have a look at my building while he's on. But that's hey, I'd do it for you already, brilliant stuff, man. So listen, Jerry, it is not my life of a fruitcake is not just about getting people in and asking them really difficult questions. Like you've done you'll have done a million podcasts and interviews and had a load of guests on where you've talked about like the upsides of businesses, the downsides of business. But I really want to get into the kind of traits that sometimes hold us back as humans, because I feel like it's my purpose to help other people. Having, I gob off about this a little bit, ADHD traits and, like having felt detrimented myself in the academia department over the years as a young'un, and what I've done to adapt myself to get over those kind of things. And it's really interesting as you get to know people more, you do actually see traits in other people, and you sort of relate to those people over a period of time. And how I've related to you over a period of time more is that I've realised that you really are quite philanthropic with your time. When you first came down, I thought you were quite a spicy character. Very much like I would see a bit of a a fairly strictish kind of school teacher.
Gee whiz.
No nonsense dude. Yeah, honestly. Hey, don't get me wrong. I've always, I liked your podcast. I knew you had a great manner on your podcast, by the way. Very informative, very educational. But when you came down, I could tell you were very measured and decisive, concise. You gave a great chat, great value in the room, and all of that kind of stuff. And that was you. But as I've got to know you, I've got to know a real kind of like a softer, even more philanthropic side. And it's not about, you're not one of these entrepreneurs where it's just all about the money. And
Sure.
it's all about the
I mean,
whatever,
it's helpful, but sure. I've been, so like we're both around about the same age. We've been on the planet for a wee while. We've been to the odd seminar, right? I hate going to seminars where I don't get information that I can actually go and use. So when I know that my stuff is not always bouncy, energetic, but my goal is to make sure people have something to go away with they can use. And I'm really, and I watch other, when you go, this is me, right? So I go to seminars or a weekend or something, and there's people up talking, and I'm listening in two forms. One, I'm listening to the content, because, right, it might be useful. Let's say it's about SEO or something. Right, maybe I wouldn't spend my entire weekend listening to that, but it's a subject. But also, the other part of me is listening to how the speaker's performing, how they're engaging with people, do you know what? I need to think about using that way of speaking to people, or using that trigger point, or slowing my voice down to make a really good point, or speeding up because they're doing something slightly different. And there's those two parts. One is the content. The other one is just what can I learn about speaking better, giving better value to people. And one of the things that I think you and I probably differ on is that you love to go off and discuss lots of different tangents and explore lots of different areas, right? I like to sometimes keep it to 5 or 6 specific things, because my observation of the way I take on information is I need a wee list. Because if you give me any more than 5, I probably won't remember any of them. But if you give me 2 or 3, I'll hopefully remember them on Monday morning when I get back to work and actually implement them. But that's just the way I guess that's maybe the way my brain works.
Yeah.
But other people love, it in different ways, because I guess they absorb it more emotionally or empathetically or whatever. Whereas maybe I'm maybe that's where that directness comes from that you're discussing.
Yes. You very much lay your boundaries out, to be fair. You do seem to have boundaries. Now, I'm really enjoying this now, just sat chatting to you with these microphones stuffed in our faces, and I'm kicking back. And
Well, you're lying back there on the sofa. Shouldn't I be on the sofa? Who's interviewing who?
It's lucky I've had a snooze already.
I mean, that's the whole thing about that. You're going to have to get a chaise longue, right, for when you're doing interviews on the life of a fruitcake.
and dress like Vera Lynn or something.
Well, I'll leave that to you.
The cross-dressing podcast.
That's
listen,
the next
man. What's your main drivers going forwards, and how's that changed over the years? What's your purpose, and how's your purpose changed over the years, and where's your purpose going?
Pretty sure some time's going to be edited out of this answer. What is my purpose? I'm still trying to work it out. So I ask my 2 sons and my daughter, who are teenagers, what do you want to be when you grow up? But if they ask me the same question, I'd answer with the same answer with them, which is, I don't really know yet. I'm still trying to develop business that gives me time freedom. And you often, and Paul, talk about there was a stage when you had a set of industrial units and it gave you a good income, and actually you could have checked out at that point of the working world to then go and enjoy yourself doing other things.
At 40 years old.
But you kept going, right? And there's probably been 1 or 2 moments for me for the same thing, but I'm still working. So there is that question of, well, why am I still working? I enjoy it. What would I do if I stopped working? I don't know. I think I would probably get bored. I don't know whether, to be fair, working as intensely as I maybe do, that it's possibly a form of a drug.
Mm-hmm.
And I do get withdrawal symptoms.
Yeah.
So if I go on holiday for 3 or 4 days, that's fine, but I don't switch off because you still do the phone or whatever. If I go away for a week, it takes me about 4 or 5 days to relax, and then I start winding back up, so going home. So I actually have to, if I want to properly disengage, I've got to go away for 3 weeks.
Yeah, we're really similar like that. Do you actually relax when you're on holiday? Do you actually get a few days where you can chill? Are you always up checking your emails before everyone else is up? Is the monkey always on your shoulder?
I'm not always checking emails, no. Depends what's going on back on the ranch and what's happening. But I will try and leave. I'm getting better at leaving the phone behind. Or if I take it away, it's only to communicate with the family.
Yeah.
You know, on a particular day. But I do like activity holidays. You and I both like the snow, right?
Yeah.
I do like activity holidays because you can't concentrate on the phone. You have to go, and we not have to be. You're doing something else, and you have to clear everything else out, because if you don't, you'll have a wipeout, right? So I do like those types of holidays.
So you've got some great team members for you at the moment. I've seen that.
Yeah,
this
you've
week.
seen that.
I've been doing your 3-day course, and you've got your. I call my team members my wooden legs. I need those wooden legs to lean on. Sometimes I'm detrimented with the ability to do stuff with tech, or how do I get this to do that? It's like I feel like such a capable human in such a lot of ways, but then so incapable in many others. And I don't think that's going to change, to be fair. I mean, I would love to do a course on
Capableness.
Go back to square one with computers and things like that. But how have you studied yourself over the last few years? Do you read many audiobooks? Like, what resources do you get into? I mean, life's an exploration for me. I can never stop reading up on business psychology and life being an exploration. Like where is this going for me? Am I on the right track? Like, do you do that as well? Are we always desperately seeking something as humans?
That's a deep question. In fact, that's quite a few questions.
Yes.
Okay, where do I go with that one? I think the biggest gift, if you can have it, is being able to self-analyze. There seem to be some people, maybe it's a curse. There are some people that seem to go through life and have no filter. They cannot analyze their own impact or how they're impacting themselves, and the rest of the world is impacting them. And to be fair, culture's made it so, or culture's made it more so. But I think there's lots of people that go through life that don't seem to understand, or maybe they decide to switch off to the fact that you are the only one in control, right? Sure, something terrible might happen and you might end up in a place where you're out of control. But as far as day-to-day, first world situation, everything that goes on is a result of how you think, what you do, and what you're thinking. Mm-hmm. And there might be the odd thing that comes in, like I say, that affects things, but even then, it's how you react to it. And I'm trying not to sound glib about that, about just, suck it up. But I think the ability to say, what happened there? Why did that happen? What do I need to do differently next time? Or how do I get myself out of my own way? Mm-hmm. Why is it things are not working? What is slow? What are the fingers pointing back at? And sometimes I'll have those conversations with myself and I don't really want to answer it, so I'll ignore it. And then other times I might have a bit more time and I'll maybe think about it a little bit more. But it's definitely a curse, but it's definitely a blessing in being able to just recognize, right, okay, actually I do have the ability to change this if I really, really want to. How do I go about that? So I think it just the ability to self-analyze. So the older I've got, the more I'm thinking about how do I trick myself to do things better when I'm procrastinating, or I've not done something to the skill level maybe I should have been able to, and maybe I haven't done it to skill level I could be able to do because internally I maybe don't think I can, so I'm sabotaging. So how do I stop that self-sabotage? Because I could have an argument in the mirror with myself, but what are some of the tricks I could put in place to make it so that that doesn't happen? I interviewed Gillian Green, really nice lady. Darren and Gillian built a great business in property, and Gillian brought up this phrase. She hasn't made it up, and I can't remember who to attribute it to, but she says sometimes when she's got a problem, she's not finding herself starting to being able to get into. She just goes 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, start.
Mel Robbins.
Yeah. And that's a really good trick, right? But other things might be, I know that, for instance, my rhythm is that between sort of 6 and 9 o'clock in the morning, I'm not really that great. Things will come to mind, I'll write them down, but I'm not brilliant. Between 9 and 11, I can be really productive. Food then starts coming into needs, right? Mm-hmm. So 12 till 2, not so good. Maybe 4 or 5 o'clock, I'm all right. My best time for working, unfortunately, for me, is about 10 o'clock onwards. So often, if I want to be creative, I need to focus on a problem 10 o'clock in the evening, which is just really? It's not great.
That is my absolute.
So I've tried to work out when's the best times for me to work, not first thing, but start at sort of mid-morning and then in the evening. I'll work through it, of course, but there's a bit in the late afternoon as well.
So that is your executive focus time. That's what they call it, executive.
Is that what
focus,
it is?
When you can really get down.
So that's not really tricking yourself. It's trying to work out how you work. But I guess an example of tricking yourself might be the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or just getting started, or a good one is, when like we're trying to get started on this podcast, right? I'm sure you don't mind me sharing with the audience, right? You're like, right, I need to start, and I'm going to get this right. So out comes a phrase, like, that didn't quite work. And then I'll try another one, that didn't quite work. And then we're talking about speaking in front of audiences. Sometimes it's just 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, pick up the microphone and hi. The microphone. What's a microphone? Microphone. Hi. And it puts you into it. And sometimes podcasts as well, I guess. Yeah, podcasts. And I started doing training online, and you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, okay, I'm working from an office or home, but all these people are waiting. And sometimes I just have to take a deep breath and say hi.
Jump in.
And it just forces you to actually get started. And that's sometimes the hardest bit, isn't it?
So Mel Robbins also has just brought a book out about high-fiving yourself.
Yeah.
And actually looking in the mirror. Let's talk about the man in the mirror. Do you ever positively or find yourself having to positively encourage yourself in order to not negatively berate yourself? Do you have an
so the simple answer to that would be absolutely, of course.
Yeah. Do you have an inner critic?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And how much airtime do they get?
Well, they get far too much airtime because I'm not where I want to be.
When you say not where you want to be, it's funny, isn't it? We've both got
where I could be.
A rake of property. I could have knocked it on the head at 40 and lived a bit like a hippie. And obviously not having met some of the fantastic people that I've now met because I carried on with my career and, working hard for other people as well, when I could have just had a much easier life. And you could have had a much easier life as well. But when you look at actually what we've got between us separately, it's a daft amount of property, but it's actually, sometimes it feels like a millstone around your neck. Now, people without a load of property might be like, well, that's like you're trying to be humble brag there. Not at all. I would much rather have half as much property or a quarter of as much property as I've got now, but with no borrowings. Because, in spicy times you think, I've got all these projects on, my borrowing cost just went up that much. Do I really need that hassle when I could have been, my son's sending me pictures from Vietnam and Thailand where, he's eating for next to nothing and surviving for next to nothing and just traveling around the most beautiful countries in the world. And here I am paying more than 50% of everything I earn in tax and having to deal with all of the stuff we've got to deal with on a daily basis. Yep. And it's like have we had the right ladders on the wrong walls?
Sure, it's a good question. And I'm going back to that thing about, is it a blessing to be able to self-analyze? There are some people that waltz through life, seem to have a great time, forget about the money stuff, they just have a great time. And you think, who's right here? But we're all driven by different things, aren't we? And interestingly, even when you get to episode 500, Paul, I'm pretty sure that you probably won't have answered that question of when is enough, because it's just so difficult. It depends on where you are in your life, depends what age you're at, depends on what, I was going to say liabilities, what responsibilities you have, and all this stuff. So actually that question it's just a moving feast. That's what I've come to think. I mean, myself and a few friends have sat down and said, right, that number, to try and actually bring it to some kind of context, that number would probably be enough because it's a life-changing kind of number. That would mean that it means you just got choices to go and experience stuff. Yeah. Not own loads of stuff, just go and experience lots of different stuff. But whether one gets to that level and you're like, well, actually, no, I'm enjoying work too much, who knows?
Yeah, that's the justification of most kind of entrepreneurs and business people going forward who have made a rake of cash, and fair play to them. It's like, yeah, money doesn't buy love. They say money doesn't buy love or freedom. It absolutely buys freedom, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But of course, it's got to be managed correctly, and we've got to be philanthropic and help other people on the way. I think that's our justification for cracking on. So, tell me about the man in the mirror around the likes of Christmas time, and when we're sort of forced to wind down. That's a time when I've noticed over this Christmas period. We're now in February, and I've noticed more and more people posting on Facey and social media regarding them not feeling like they feel like they should be feeling at Christmas.
Yeah. So, I mean, the great thing about this podcast, not this particular episode, but in general, that you're trying to do is trying to remove that, not discuss the whole thing about, you've made it or you've not made it, or it's actually just about how do you tick, yeah? So parking the financial stuff or whether one's doing well or not from that point of view, just is one doing well in life, right? And looking in the mirror thing. I generally have fun. I do enjoy life, but I do sometimes question, am I doing everything to its fullest? And am I being selfish by the way that I do work a lot, and I've got family of 3 kids? And I do remember talking with, there's been 2 conversations in my life that do ring in my ears quite a lot. One of them was a chap who had a pretty good business. It was turning over 20 million. They had a pretty tidy profit every year. But he said to me, but Jerry, doing all this, I should have spent more time with the kids.
Yeah.
That was one. And then another conversation, very fortunate in my youth, when I was under 15, family friends had a yacht in the Mediterranean. And just to put it in context, right, not to say anything other than to put it in context, I grew up in a Highland town with my mum in a council house, right? So it's not like we had loads and loads of money around and we were doing all sorts of things. But I had a great childhood. I mean, it was great. But we had this opportunity to go to Turkey, to go sailing for 2 weeks along the coast. Now, I love historical stuff, right? So in ancient times, this is my detour. In ancient times, right, a lot of the travel was by sea, right? So all these old settlements and everything are all on the coast. But now we don't travel on the coast as much, particularly in that part of Turkey, because there's a lot of isthmus things sticking out and back and forth and everything else. So I remember we found like mosaics just getting washed into the sea, columns sticking out of beaches, because these sites are still there. They're just not anywhere near the beaten track. Now I've got off track. But I really enjoyed that trip. And part of the thing that came out of that trip was the lady that part of the couple that owned this boat and had a nice lifestyle they really inspired me to do things in my life. But also she said to me, getting to the point. She said, make sure you enjoy it on the way, because it's all very well having the trappings and having that kind of lifestyle, but don't spend your life getting to there, because actually you're wasting your life.
Yeah.
And those ring in my ear. They ring in my ears more and more the older I get.
Yeah. I mean, we might have 20 years left. 20, 30
Speak for yourself.
years, I've got a chart at work called My Life in Weeks, and there's 4,000 dots on there.
Yeah.
And 3/4 of them, two-thirds of them are filled in now. So it's like, when I think about my life as a cross section now, economic conditions can make a fool out of a wise man and a wise man out of a fool. And in that respect, I'll feel very lucky if I get to the end of all this, having got so many jobs on and so much stuff that's been held back in planning and stuff that's been completely out of my control that I just couldn't have seen. When I get to the end of this, because I'm a resourceful mother clucker, when I get to the end of all this and I sort of exit stage left with hopefully a smile on my face, and let some time go between finishing all of the projects that I've got to finish, and then starting up some new businesses as I am doing, and allowing other people through systemizing and setting objectives and key results, and allowing them to take some of the weight, because I feel like I've taken such a lot of the weight over the last 30 years.
You asked me about Christmas, and I didn't answer your question, right? So last year, but often running up to Christmas, and this is conversation just me and you, right? My wife's not going to hear this, right? So last year, coming up to Christmas, I was running on empty for a considerable period of time. And I often find that way when I'm coming up to Christmas. And for me, Christmas is very commercial. And maybe that's just because, well, we've had a restaurant and, Christmas is a big time, right? So we're right in there with that commerciality. But for me, my best Christmases are going away, less presents, can only take a certain amount. You're usually going away to somewhere where there's an activity, so you've got something to go and do. And Christmas, which is celebrating someone's birthday, is set within a reasonable context. Whereas sometimes, and it seems to be more and more so, or maybe I'm just allowing it to be in my life, but it can be a 6-week thing, maybe longer, right? 3-month thing. And I actually end up getting a little bit anxious as we get close to it. And the standard operating procedure in my life seems to be, we get towards Christmas, I'm running on empty, and I stumble over the finishing line, and usually I've picked up some kind of bug. Flu, cold, because my body's a bit knackered. I stumble over the finishing line, I'm ill for a week or so, and then we get back to it and I'm all refreshed and ready to go.
Ditto.
It's funny, isn't it? Now, is that our fault? Yes. Can we change that? Probably. But it just seems that every year, like, right, next year, I'm going to make the run in much better. I'm not going to concentrate so much on all the frivolities of it all. I'm going to try and get a little bit more control of it, and make it a bit more the way I would like it to be. But it just never quite seems to go that way.
It's kind of like one of those times, it's the time of year when you're expected to be festive and all of that kind of stuff. And I can't allow myself to be as festive as a lot of other people in respect of I've always got so much to do just before Christmas that I'm working right up to the finish line.
It is. It's like a finish line, isn't it?
It makes you feel bad because you haven't done your shopping online previously. You haven't got organised. You haven't got everything ordered 2, 3, 4 weeks before. You haven't been to Manchester and had a lovely 4-day shopping trip to do all of the nice stuff because you've had this to finish and that to finish and the other to finish. And
I find the other thing about both that time of the year and going on holiday is, and again, this is just a personality trait for me, but I feel I make decisions. A lot of my staff will say, Jerry, you never make any decisions, right? But I feel like in work, I'm the one who's making decisions. Mm-hmm. And again, this is this thing about listening to someone talking, and I'm just doing this to myself in my own head here. Listening to this, I would be saying to myself, yeah, Jerry, that's fine, but really that's your issue, right? And this podcast, this whole discussion, right, is not about here's how we're going to do it. This is just how we mess it up.
Yes,
right?
Yeah.
So that Christmas thing and the holiday thing is I'm making decisions at work, and when I go on holiday, I don't want to make any decisions. So we end up occasionally with either we do bugger all or is the odd argument, because everybody's like, well, what are we going to do, Dad? I'm like, not my decision. I've been making decisions all year. We're now on holiday. You guys decide what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And nobody ever makes a decision, right? So it's frustrating sometimes, because I feel the last thing I want to do is decide anything. Just let it all wash over me, please.
That's sometimes the thing, isn't it? You just wish other people could just take those decisions away, but then their argument would be,
You're the
well,
one that
if we
normally
made
does
a
it.
load of decisions like that, you'd only say that it was the bloody wrong one, but we have to give that control away.
Of course, yeah. And you
we'll
know,
never be the helicopter entrepreneurs that we want to be.
as they say, you know, I mean, I make all the decisions in life, right? But you know, the wife makes all the important decisions, right? So you know, there's just that thing about actually just get over yourself.
Mine feels like, can someone else take this bull by the horns for a while? Just give my arms a rest.
Yeah. Do you think, Paul, though, actually, so on one side we're thinking, right, you know, or somebody listening to this might be thinking, well, yeah, you're thinking you're doing everything and you're macho and everything else, but actually, in reality, do you make loads of decisions all the time, or do you procrastinate a lot?
Well,
does things happen fast? And I appreciate planning and neutrality, wherever that phrase is you love saying, all get in the way. But actually, is it because we just take ages to make decisions sometimes? We think we're making loads, but we're not.
You know, this is my absolute, I'm designing at the moment the human revolution, the property revolution and lean business revolution, and it is all about getting people to make faster decisions. And that's my interest in the world of business psychology at the moment, is getting to those decisions, getting to that accountability, and having no wriggle room. I've actually just taken on a new ops manager, Paul Smith, and he's an expert in getting people to do stuff.
Right.
There's no movement.
Is he in charge of you?
He's seriously laser focused.
Yeah,
that's
great.
We're going to be setting up the mastermind. We're going to be setting up, mentorship. We're going to be setting up property revolution, all that kind of stuff. And I'm so looking forward to doing it, because he does have a bullwhip, and there's sometimes 50 decisions I might have to make in a day.
So sometimes, I mean, one of the best things I did when I could afford to do it is get somebody to tidy up behind me. Yeah. I'm quite good at starting stuff. I'm terrible at finishing stuff.
I'm exactly the same. We're fire starters, ideas people, creators.
Yeah.
So, well, I've stretched you on the rack of understandmyself.com.
Yes.
It might even take another podcast to go over those traits, your traits, my traits, and there was some surprises in there. But I really, I'd love to see your wealth dynamic profile as well in your 16 personalities test, and that might be
the next one
for another time. But so, who inspires you on a macro and a micro scale? Like, who does anyone inspire you in the in your immediate vicinity?
So
you
gave me a sneaky. Sorry.
So that you particularly liked working with, because you're pretty much a single runner at the moment, aren't you? I'm surprised about that, because you did speak about business partners over the last 3 days, but I didn't realise that you didn't actually have any now. You know, you've all settled and, all on amicable terms, bought each other out here and there. And I guess that's the way that it should be sometimes,
yes.
Like the cut and thrust of business.
Okay. What was the first question?
The question was, who inspires you?
Oh, right,
on
yes.
a macro and a micro scale. I'm going to cut down on the amount of question.
Well, yeah. You're not asking one question. You're asking me three. Right. So that question, I had a sneaky peek at that before we started, so it gave me a little bit of time to think, so I wasn't completely blindsided. And I've decided in my mind, I don't have anyone specifically that I look at, and it's traits that I like. Mm-hmm. Because most mavericks or people that achieve a lot have some downsides. So there's some traits that I like. So, and I'll bring in the business partner thing in a second, but you look at how much you achieve, and I was saying earlier on, I'm frustrated at how little I've achieved sometimes. And, you have to look at somebody like Elon Musk, and some people don't like him at all, right? And they've maybe heard the full story, part of the story, whatever, or a story they didn't like. And as I say, lots of entrepreneurs have elements that maybe need chiseled and rounded off. But
I think we did that quite well, didn't
yeah,
we? Cool. Sorry.
one of the elements that I just find unbelievable about that guy is how much he gets done in really stressful, high level decisions. I mean, taking a company, whether you like these companies or not, getting a company like SpaceX to the stage it's at is superhuman. But to do it alongside doing the same thing with Tesla and other stuff is just unbelievable. Now, sure, he's had 3 wives or whatever, counting, and loads of kids and heartache and everything else. But that trait of the ability to compartmentalize and get all that stuff done is just like quite amazing. And then if I talk about one of my previous business partners, and what compliments me is Jamie, who probably never listened to this, but Jamie Fraser, he's very forthright, lots of fun. We have a lot of giggles. We do a lot of things like outdoor stuff together. But I wouldn't necessarily want to get in the way of him. And if you want stuff done, you give it to him. I mean, he is an animal at getting stuff done. Unbelievable, right? So as a business partner, I was generally a bit more strategic, and he would just be like, right, let's just point Jamie in that direction and let him go. And he just gets stuff done. Phenomenal amount of stuff done. And that's a trait. I'm like, that's a great trait. But also Jamie would I'm sure, agree with me that sometimes his people management is pretty strong.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm not necessarily quite like that. But that is also a trait you need if you're going to get shit done, right?
See, I'd have you down, Jerry, as someone who doesn't suffer fools gladly. And it sounds like he's the next step up.
Yeah, I would say that.
But
Yeah.
Let me just go back to Elon Muskox there. He's a beast for not tolerating people who are offended by the truth.
Oh, yeah.
So I've noticed, like, I mean, obviously I've been out of the Navy for a quarter of a century now, but like, it was, you either did or you didn't. And if you didn't, you were disobeying the
consequences.
So shit got done. Come out into Civvy Street, and you're surrounded by people that are kind of offended by the truth. And you're like, what?
We've got a great guy working with us, Kyle. Kyle has come into Civvy Street, and the hardest thing I think Kyle is finding is that in the army, you say something, gets done. You come out in Civvy Street, you say something, doesn't get done. You ask another way, doesn't get done. You ask politely, doesn't get done. It's like, how do you get anybody to do anything out here?
Yeah. You've got to kneel down with a pair of like princely +4s on with a velvet cushion and a little chocolate on it.
Yes.
With a request. Could you possibly do that, please? Pretty please, with sugar on top. What's it? Pulp Fiction where he says, so pretty please, with sugar on top. Clean the fucking car.
So traits is definitely something I would agree. So obviously people like Richard Branson, I do too. There's some stuff there he's done which is unbelievable, and I think I've kind of been a bit of a magpie, just trying to take different bits and pieces. There's been a couple of people I mentioned a couple earlier on who said things in my life, but there's one chap unfortunately who's passed now that was an unmentioned, unknown, didn't really recognise as a mentor. That was never the discussion, but really did have quite a lot of influence on me when I was younger. Mm-hmm. A good sounding board is probably the way to put it. I can't point to one thing that he said that was just that, wow, that was star-gazing kind of moment, but always willing to listen and guide in a gentle format. And he had a lot of influence on me. Mm. Yeah.
I had my uncle that was like that, very business orientated, very, very sort of clever man, and you could run any deal past him or anything like that, and he would just know the answer and with bells on.
Yeah.
And, my dad was a sensible guy as well, but my uncle was really sort of business focused, and it does make such a lot of difference. And that's part of the joy of doing the property thing and the property training that you do. And,
it's great fun.
To be able to be that sounding board for some people where, the realization of, yes, you can do this. That's something that, with this podcast, with some of the other stuff that I've got planned, like we can, to the thought of making the difference in someone's life and a change in direction for half an hour's mentorship or an hour's mentorship. And, you like to think that, when you do fall off the bus, that you will be remembered for, some of the people that might travel far and wide to come to your funeral. That old bugger taught me some good shit.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about. So that gives me an enormous sense of well-being to know the fact that, helped a few folks in my time and will continue to do so. And, you strike me as, well, I know you to be that person anyway, because I've seen that you've enjoyed this last 3 days of, taking us around your various projects and all of that kind of stuff. And there's been no glossing over anything. It's like, this building's half finished. This is, we jumped into this. We were in hot water here. We succeeded there. We had to,
blow a load of money there.
Jiggery pokery there, and get my hand down the drain here, and various other stuff. So thank you for that, man. So self-sabotage. Tell me about that. Have you done this recently?
Have I self-sabotaged recently? Oh, I'm sure I will have done. So we were talking about making decisions. So last year, potentially, if I actually really spent time looking at my navel, could have been the hardest year I've ever had.
Your navel?
Look, that's what they say when you're looking at your navel.
Is that Scottish?
Navel gazing.
Navel gazing, right? Okay. Do you pull out some,
that's what you say.
You just pull out some blue fluff every time you look at your navel, don't you?
That was just navel gazing. All right, looking inwardly. I could say that last year was the hardest year I've had, but also on the flip side, there's been some really great successes. I just choose to try and compartmentalize them and park the ones that are maybe challenging, so that it doesn't completely get in the way. However, back to your question about self-sabotage, one of the things that I have kicked myself in the ghoulies for is refinance. So this time last year, I needed to refinance. And now, today, as of this recording, I still haven't refinanced. I'm very close to it, but I have wasted a lot of time and procrastinated and didn't quite know how to do certain. I mean, I've raised finance a few times, right? This is quite a big lump I need to raise, and it's sure you could do it through private finance, but it's a big lump. So there's been plenty of times when I have found something else to do, whether it's chainsawing down a tree, walking the dog, emptying a drain, right? Showing a new customer around. All things are important, but not as critical as the fuel in the bus. Because if we run out of fuel, we're all stuffed, right? So I'm going through all this stuff about important things, but not the critical thing. And then eventually, the way I managed to break that was getting somebody's help. I just thought, I can't, for some reason, I can't quite get all the actions done. So I had to reach out and get somebody else to help me, right. which has made the difference. But basically, I made a rod for my own back. I spent really months procrastinating, taking too long, not getting this thing done. So I ended up most of last year with this big gorilla on my back of having to sort out this refinance. And the bank's been very good with me, but basically we don't fit their mold anymore, so we need to find another set of finance.
Yeah.
Anyway, that is probably a good example of self-sabotage. I should have got that stuff dealt with.
See, sometimes I've wished over the years that I've had a twin brother that has got different traits to me. But you you see some businesses where there's say 2 or 3 partners involved, and they've got their thing.
Yes.
And like, they just push on their thing, and it happens. Stuff happens brilliantly because they're all,
that's their side, that's their thing, that's their thing. Yeah.
I sometimes wish I had a brother that, I think sometimes between 2 people you can do 3 times as much anyway. And it would just be so nice to have someone that would take as much responsibility as you within your own business.
Yes.
And those businesses, wow, yeah. This is why now actually I'm interested in cash flowing businesses. So I've set Gemma McCready up with the property management side of things, and I've got a really good salesperson coming on for the sales because I want those cash flowing businesses, but I'll give 50% away. And it's up to them to take it forward. They're going to be the engine. I'm going to be, part of the brains behind it, the ideas, that kind of thing, because I just want someone else to take more responsibility. Now, I'm kind of really enjoying business at the moment because it's quite spicy times. But I did a similar thing. But it's dangerous in a way. But I spoke to Adam Lawrence about 18, 20 months ago, with a view to getting him to come up with the property thing, TDN, and I ran a fantastic event in Porsche Teesside, and he came up and did a fantastic chat. And a few months before that, I'd been speaking to him, and he said, "If I was you," he said, I'd probably fix it 3%, 3.5%, And I'm looking at it thinking, will rates really go up above that? We're at 0.1% at the moment, and will it go up that sharply? Now rates are sat at 5.25%. I really wish I'd taken his advice. However, in every adversity lies the seed of a great benefit. That is my favourite expression, as you well know. And some good will come out of the fact that I didn't take his advice. But it was one of those, it's like, I know I should, and we'll have to look at that, but I had 50 million things to do before that. And you know how much chew it is to refinance a portfolio. And I'd have to get this out and that out and blah, blah, blah. And we're busy doing it. There's a million reasons why not to. And then all of a sudden it's like, shit. And you're past that point of
no return.
Yeah. But it is what it is, right? And hopefully rates will come down a bit. Okay, so how do you get through your grey moments, man? Do you just keep on trucking?
Generally, yes. Sometimes taking those moments, this sounds a bit woo-woo, but sometimes that's just going out the back door and taking a deep breath and getting some fresh air.
Having a word with yourself.
Yeah. But sometimes, right, so we've both had kids, right? So I remember the time when child is born, they come home, they start crying, they stay awake all night, not during sleep all day, all that stuff. And I was like a zombie for probably about 6 years because we had 3 kids over, they're all basically 18 months to 2 years apart. And then Holly, who's the youngest, was the one that took the longest to break in terms of going to sleep at night, right? And we did this thing called control crying. I'm going off on a tangent, but we did control crying, which is basically if they're crying, you go and see them and make sure they're okay, but you don't talk to them, don't cuddle them, just lay them back down again, done. And we said, we'll do it for 10 days. If it doesn't work, fine. She's going to have to come back with us. We'll carry on with all this crying, and she rules the roost and everything else. Day 10, she finally went to sleep. Oh, my goodness. Wow. And that was the end of it. So basically for all that time, I was basically this zombie. And you must have been the same, unless you were very lucky and your wife took care of it all. But basically, you're getting up in the middle of the night, you're walking around trying not to wake up. You know that feeling? You're like, right, I need to go and do this, that, and the other, but I'm not really going to wake up. I'm not going to think about anything else. I'm just going to put the milk on or whatever it is. I'm going to heat that up, right? And then I'm just going to feed this baby, burp at bed, walk back up, dressing gown. I'll just leave it on bed. Wait for 20 minutes until the next one, right? And that zombie stuff, sometimes at work, I feel like I'm doing a bit of that zombie stuff. And then I think, nah, it's nothing like what it was 10 years ago with the kids, because that was just horrific. But you do know that you're not being as productive. There is that for definite.
It would be remiss of me, especially if my missus is listening, to not give some respect to my Mrs. Julie for the fact that
you didn't go through that. What?
She was great then, because I was getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and coming home 10 o'clock at night, sometimes as black as a crow, grafting, building the portfolio. She didn't work at the time, and she brought the kids up, and say, she brought the kids up. She did the feeds in the middle of the night, all that kind of stuff. She just took that on board, which was absolutely fantastic because I'm terrible for sleep, as you know. I mean, before this body, I had to sit in the car park for, an hour before and have a snooze because we'd had a bit of a long day because I'm getting such an old geezer now. I mean, I'm up all times of night and day. Bizarre, up at 2 o'clock in the morning sometimes. So, yeah, okay, dude. So, I think that's the end of the podcast. So it took a while to get started, but I think it went really well. And I want to thank you, Jerry, for sort of taking. How do other people do this stuff? I've been guided by you massively on the equipment and the ways to do this stuff. You've interviewed me twice lately in quick succession on your poddy as well, which has given me a great insight into it. So I just want to say, hey, man, you're a massively respected guy in the world of property. Someone very nicely said about me the other week that in 10 years of knowing about you, I've never heard a bad word said against you. I was like,
That's a good one.
You need to expand your horizons a bit. But with yourself, it's the same. I've never heard a bad word said against you in the few years that I've known about you. And, your training has been fantastic the last 3 days. I've loved spending time with you. You're a smashing guy, and long may this continue. And
appreciate that. Thank you, Paul.
I think on my 4-hour drive back home now, I'll be thinking of 45 other things I wish I'd asked you.
Hey, we can come back and do this, can't we?
Yeah, good stuff.
I'm really looking forward to how this podcast develops and how you find your track. How you're going to do your interviews and the types of people you're going to be interviewing. But I think it's a great opportunity to get into the psychology of stuff. I know property's in the background and business is in the background, but I've really enjoyed this because we're talking about things that you wouldn't ordinarily discuss on a property discussion, because you might discuss, what was the ROI and what were the problems? But actually, a lot of the problems are what's going on in your head.
Yeah.
So I think this is going to be a great podcast. So well done, Paul. I'm glad you've started it.
Yeah, man, and that is sometimes the most difficult thing. And I just want to end on this. This podcast is going to be about how people feel. There's a bit of an epidemic at the moment of kind of property trainers and people that are putting themselves out there as key person of influence and all of that kind of stuff. And it's all about the Rolexes and the leaning on Lamborghinis and the Range Rovers and how they've done so well at property. Let me tell you, property's fucking hard, and it takes a lot of graft, and it takes a lot of risk, and I don't know why it is, but it just seems the world of property just seems to, and I know this isn't a property podcast, I don't want it to be. I want it to be about business and feelings and traits and, how we can help each other in that regard. And I just think it's a bit of a poison that people tend to look up to people just because they're swinging a set of Lamborghini keys.
Yeah, but the shifting sands are in business too. It's not just the property world that's hard. It is difficult. It's getting more difficult. And apart from anything else, running the country's getting more difficult. Whether that's self-inflicted, of course, is another debate, but it's getting harder because financially, we're getting found out. We don't have enough money. And this is not a political podcast, right? But just, it is getting harder for the political elite to make things work, and that is having ramifications for us. Now, okay, sometimes we shoot ourselves in the feet. Sometimes we do that a lot. But I think, without looking back with rose-tinted glasses, before 1997, maybe not 97, maybe before 2008, when I look back, most things were fairly steady. But ever since then, there's been disruption. And it's almost like people are just used to that now. There's just that rhythm.
Yes.
And just, I'm sorry, I'm digressing on the interview podcast, right? But one of the things I've really noticed that's really been encouraging this year, and I've heard it this weekend as well, is that, yes, November, December, a lot of people were running on empty, and there wasn't maybe quite as many inquiries for what the sort of, not just in property, but in all sorts of sectors. January, things have turned much more positive, and so far into February the same. And there's been a couple of people at the weekend that are not in our business line that have said things have been really busy. I've had loads of this, or I've had loads of that, or lots of inquiries and lots of decision making. So I'm encouraged by that. It to me, it's as though the business community has again said, "Oh, enough is enough. I'm just going to get on with it."
Yeah.
And I know it's in 2008 and 9 that when the big thing came along, everything stopped, money stopped, everything stopped. But it actually got started again pretty quickly.
Yeah.
When people make that decision. And I feel that's what's happening just now. I might be completely wrong.
Yeah, I think there's light at the end of the tunnel. I don't think it's an oncoming train. I feel in the last recessions that I've felt, I've always felt, what's everyone worrying about? You know, it's a recession. We'll get to the end of it. Just be resilient and keep cracking on. This last year, 2023, has been the time when I've been most worried about everything.
It's been a hard year.
Due to the fact that the amount of stuff that I've taken on, feeling as if I'm in some way invincible, just because I've cracked on previously. Yep. And it's great to have a decent portfolio behind me that's, kind of churning out the cash flow. Actually, I've starved myself of a bit of a life by taking on a lot.
Yes.
And some other people maybe not doing exactly what they said they would do because they couldn't do because they were affected by the economic conditions as well. You know, I've had a business partner with a hurricane that hit his project in America and the insurance didn't pay out, which had an effect on the amount of money that he could put into a project. So I had to put more money in so it's, luckily I sold my industrial units last year. I didn't want to sell them, but the guy pestered the life out of me. If he hadn't have come along and pestered the life out of me at the time when I really didn't want to sell, but effectively, give me an offer.
You sold at the top of the market.
That would have been a spicy old time for me. So, I'm thanking my lucky stars economically right now, and just trying to smooth out exit stage left.
Yes, but I do think things are improving.
Yeah.
That's not what we're here to talk about.
Yeah,
but it's encouraging to see that.
Well, thanks so much, Jerry, again. And I've got another 50,000 questions I want to ask you, but
we'll do that in part 2.
Do that another time. Thank you, man.
Fab. Thanks, Paul. Best of luck with it.
Thank you, mate.
Okay, there we go, mate.
Happy with that. Thank you very much.